So welcome, everyone. I'm really happy to be hosting this community and this conversation with Robert Bosnak. Robert's zooming in from Santa Barbara. And I've been taking his classes on the Jung platform, and I've been reading his books and really have had so many epiphanies and synchronicities since being engaged with his sharing his imagination. And so he's created a form of working with dreams called Embodied imagination that we're going to explore today and get a firsthand experience of. Before we do that, I wanted to share that I'm reading his books, the Red Sulfur Saga. There's 4 books in the series. And it's really, I'm learning so much. I have to say, I'm reading it on Kindle, which I usually don't do, but I'm glad I am because your vocabulary, Robert, is incredible. And I'm learning so much. If I see a word that I don't know, I just click on it and I get the definition. And it's just been really a fun journey. And I'm not the only one reading that book. Also, Doug, who's with us, is reading. I'm not sure how far along you are into the story, to the saga, but
I'm
the text from Doug saying he couldn't put the book down. So I'd love to have you talk about your experience.
Oh, me. Oh, yes. Robert, I think it's one of the most wonderful books I've ever read. I feel like it's taken me back to the 1666s, where I probably knew you.
Probably, yes. Yeah,
I'm sure
you look
were
very
an
familiar.
alchemist. I'm sure you were an alchemist at that time. And maybe I was learning from you, just like I'm learning from the book. I just love your use of language, and the historical perceptions are just really enlightening. And I love your way that you use similes. The one that stands out is comparing the bulbous glass container in Marianne's laboratory to a winter tulip. I taught 4th grade English and all for years, and love similes and metaphors, and you are a simile master. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That is so, well, I think that's when you work with dreams your whole life, because dreams put that in. Dreams metaphorize all the time and put images next to each other that then become similes after you stay with them for a while. And not that they are meant to be similes, but as you focus on them, they become that.
Robert, it's interesting that you compare it to a winter tulip. Only a Dutch person perhaps would have that.
Well, it is a very Dutch story, because actually it's based on writings of the 17th century, which were verified by Spinoza. I got interested in it because I've always been interested in Spinoza. I suppose you all know who he is. He was probably one of the greatest philosophers of the 2nd millennium. And much of our 19th century philosophy is based on him. And so I find a letter when I was working on alchemy. I've been working on alchemy now for 50 years. I find this letter written by Spinoza that he has verified the transmutation from lead into gold in 1666. And I said, wow, if Spinoza, who is not a fool, goes and speaks with people and people tell him that this actually happened, and describe how during the assay is the way that they test the gold. During the assay, some of the silver that was used in the assay transformed into gold under the eyes of the mint master of the Netherlands. So I thought, well, we always take alchemy as purely metaphorical and as the embodied imagination of the medieval era. But what if, and then of course you can only go into fiction. So what I took the facts of the 17th century, which is a century I am very interested in, and studied it. And then, of course, my studies of alchemy, and I started to put that together with the story that was told by the man Helvetius, who in 1666 was present at that transmutation. And then I began to read up things by Robert Boyle, who is the father of chemistry, and Isaac Newton. They were both very capable alchemists. And I found people coming back in their story time and again. So I started to bring those together, and they became my characters. And of course, what was really important is that in the 17th century, the big battle for science is going on, right? The church is trying to prevent science from coming into being because it is a worldview that is opposed by the church. They accepted Copernicus because it was still a theory. But then Galileo came and with his technology showed that it's not just a theory. Actually, we are turning around the sun, and you can demonstrate that. And then they found Saturn having rings and all those kind of things. And the church banished that because the earth was central, the human was central, and anything that was against that was banished. And then great wars broke out. It was the wars between the Protestants, who were more in line with trying to give science time to expand, and the Catholics, who tried to keep it in the old worldview. So it was a battle between the worldviews. So I think the 17th century is one of the most interesting centuries besides our own, because we always think that your own century is the most interesting. But it is the great transformation of the Western mind. And so I am talking about what we gained, because we gained science. Without science, we wouldn't be talking here through this technology. And we lost a great deal. And the great deal that we lost was knowing by way of participation. And so I decided to write this book, and it got longer and longer and longer. Because the story got more and more involved, and I did what you do in Embodied Imagination is I followed the characters. I didn't make up the story. I just started with historical reality, and on the basis of that, is it possible for people to mute themselves as you're listening, because I get a lot of feedback? Okay. So what happened with the story, with what you do with Embodied Imagination, is that you go to the characters in the dream, to the presences in the dream. It can be a car, or it can be an animal or a person, but you go towards them and you begin to experience their presence, and then you become absorbed by their presence. It's a basic phenomenology 101. And so I then let the characters do the talking and followed them in their story. And it became more and more involved and more interesting. And then it became an overwhelmingly passionate love story that pitted a mother against a daughter, having the same beloved, and a mother organizing that the daughter will have the children because she cannot have children at that moment. And so it becomes a very complex romantic tale. And that's very important, because actually alchemy is about love. It is about passion. And the beginning of an alchemical process is to focus the love, and that can be the love for the materials, but it can also be the love between people, because alchemists usually were working, or not usually, frequently were working in couples. The man was called the alchemist, and the woman was called the soror mystica, the mystical sister. They were both alchemists. They just had different names. and they would work together, and the eros between them would cause the metals to transform. So it's a love story. All of alchemy basically is a love story. And so that's why I assume that the love story became central in the books themselves. And then, of course, it becomes the battle between those who want to use it to make the world a better place and those who want to use it for their own power. Well, we know that story. It happens today, every moment of the day. And so that's how this book came into being. It took me about 10 years and a lot of study. And everything in the, all the historical facts have been verified. And so it's interesting to write science fiction in an historical era, because usually science fiction is written in the future. Science fiction is usually not written in the past. But in the past, you have a whole world. And the world is much more interesting than anything that what anybody can create. The battle between Protestantism and Catholicism, between science and the medieval holding on to the central notion of humans and the earth. That's a very interesting state and a very interesting world. So it is science fiction in a world of the past, with the world of the past being as honestly presented as I can.
Wonderful description, Robert. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that it feels so timely in the way you speak, and how you mentioned something about alchemical psychology, and how important that is for our times. So I wonder if you just speak briefly on that, and then we'll end here.
I want to say something about my language. I am Dutch, and in My Fair Lady, somebody comes up and says about Eliza Doolittle, she speaks English too well. She must be Hungarian. So I learned English in school. When I was 13, I started learning English. And so you have to learn English as a second language. And you begin to find words in English. I think is the most beautiful language in the world. I've always been in love with English. And there are so many words in English. It's one of the richest languages ever, because it is a mixture of French and Anglic. And so you get the Germanic Anglic language coming into the French because of William the Conqueror in 1066. When the Normans came, the French Normans came and overran the country. And so you get two languages that become one language, which is English, which is unspeakably rich. So I love it.
I love it too. I love that you speak English. And also I'm loving in the gibberish course I'm taking that you're translating from original Latin text. It's just unbelievable that you have.
Well, yeah, the problem with alchemy is that most of it is written in Latin. And my mentor, one of my mentors, was a man called Rudolf Ritzema, and he translated the I Ching from the Chinese, because he says you cannot work on it from a translation. You have to work on it from the original language. And I got very infected by that, and I had to learn Latin for my law training, because in a previous life I was a criminologist, and for my law training you need to study Roman law in Holland. And so I had to study Roman law, because it's a limited law system where you can get an overview of an entire law system. And that was all in Latin. And so that's how I learned Latin.
Well, I really get the sense of this renaissance within you, of this very developed left brain, and also this incredible capacity to access the right brain and merge the conscious and subconscious. So I'm really grateful to be
Thank you.
having access to your
I'm
world.
trying.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And one thing I want to share, kind of as maybe a segue into our embodied imagination play shop here, is what I'm learning in the gibberish course, is that in the West, when we have physical challenges that we try to get rid of them. And from the perspective of alchemy, I'm learning that we want to learn the spirit of the issue that keeps returning because there's something there for us. And I feel like that must be also true then in a reoccurring dream.
Yes, well, of course, let me start out with my basic statement is that I know nothing. So if you ask me about a dream, I will give you my opinion. But knowing, I don't know anything, because in this, the moment that you get to ultimate things, you get to belief systems, and I try to avoid belief. So I basically try to avoid believing anything. And I have a lot of faith, but I don't have any belief. But I value human experience. So I have been interested in human experience all my life, and traveled the world to ask people for their experience. And I've been incredibly lucky that people actually talk to me. And so I've asked people about their experience all over the world. And that gives you some kind of a sense of what people feel and what people experience. So that is all that I can say about dreaming, and about if dreaming helps you, or if something that is difficult in dreaming, like a repetitive dream, if that is intended to help you. I don't think it's intended to do anything. I think that if you start working on dreams that are very penetrating and stay with you, something begins to change in you. That's what I've seen. So that is what I can say with confidence, that once you start working on dreams that that don't let you go, something very important happens. So I can only talk about experience, not about what is real. Or well, I can talk about what's real, but not about what's true.
Yes, that's wonderful. So your commitment.
And that's the basis of embodied imagination. Embodied imagination comes from the point of view that if we take dreaming as our paradigm, not waking, but if we take dreaming as our paradigm, then we have to define dreaming. And so I've asked people all over the world, what is a dream? And they came up with the same language everywhere. I was somewhere and something happened, and then I woke up. So that to me is the definition of dreaming. Being somewhere where something happens and then you wake up. Everything else is not phenomenological. Everything else is a belief system. This is not a belief system. This is purely experiential. Everybody experiences a dream as a real event that when you wake up, you put it in your cultural setting. So if you wake up as a Chinese person, you put it as a prediction of the future. If you wake up as an Aboriginal person, you put it as a meeting with the ancestors. If you wake up as a scientist, you would say it's a quake in the brainstem that has absolutely no meaning. All those kind of things are the faith and the belief system of the waking world. But if you stay with the dreaming world, the thing that we all have in common is that while dreaming, we know that we're awake. We don't believe that we're awake. You don't believe you're awake right now. You know that you're awake. So we know that we're awake while dreaming, and we know that we're in a real world that is our environment. I'm not talking about lucid dreaming. It's a very, very small percentage of dreaming. I'm talking about common dreaming. And so it is a world of reality that you find yourself in, that things happen to you in. And so therefore, in embodied imagination, what we're trying to do is to create flashbacks to that world.
Wonderful. What I hear you saying is it's before translation, like you were saying before, to really understand the I Ching, you have to go to the original language before
Right.
it gets translated. You're saying the same thing about the dream before
Exactly.
you translate it. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that's really
And so my friend had a very good solution for it. What he did is he basically translated every character of the I Ching. And so you have a translation of each character, because the interesting thing about Chinese is everything's juxtaposed. We have a grammar that moves from here to there. They have a juxtaposition of ideograms, and out of that many possibilities arise. And so he gives you all the possibilities, because the I Ching was translated into German by a Protestant minister. And then it was translated by Carrie Baines into English, who never used the I Ching. So it moves very far from the original text. Same thing with dreams.
Mm. All right, well, should we dive in and see if there's someone who would like to bring a dream forward?
Sure.
Okay,
Let's do that.
let's do that. I'm going to remove your spotlight and just have anyone who's interested in bringing a dream forward, raise your hand. Yeah, okay, so we'll go ahead and start with Doug, and then Marilyn, and then Hillary.
Well, I don't know if we will have
Enough time for all.
yeah. Let me tell you about my work with dreams.
Okay.
To give a dream a good shake, a fair shake, it takes about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half to work on a dream. I started out working on dreams for 3 hours per dream, but then after a while I could only work with experienced meditators because everybody else fell asleep. So I can work with dreams in 15 or 20 minutes. I did that for those of you who know that I did the Spooky Dreams Cafe during the COVID period. And I worked with people for, say, 10, 15 minutes. You get a very particular way of working with dreams. It's very focused, and it's not as rich as when you do it over a long period of time. So since there's 3 people, I will do the short form, but realize that this is the short form, and frequently in therapy, people have to use the short form because they don't have enough time, because people have to talk about their soap opera for half an hour, and then you have 15 minutes or 20 minutes to work on a dream. So I will do the short form, but realize that there is a long form that is actually the better form. Okay, so we start with Doug. Now, let me tell you about how to tell a dream, okay? And how to listen to a dream. So I would like everybody to be involved. So everybody take for a moment, go into your body and feel what is happening to your body. And as you feel what's happening to your body, you can then notice shifts that happen to your body, shifts that happen to your emotion as Doug brings in his dream, because his dream becomes turbulence in your system. And so you can observe the turbulence, but in order to do that, you have to be able to know the baseline that you started from. So you start first with about a minute feeling what's going on in your body, feel the emotions that you have, the sensations, and then, Doug, you tell the dream in the present tense, as if it were happening right now, and take us back to your dream. The more you're able to take us back into your dream like a travel guide, the more you're able to do that, the easier it is for us to get there and to help you get into a flashback to the dream, because that's what I'm going to try and do. So everybody, Doug included, please start with feeling what's going on in your body, feel your emotions, and take a minute to do so. This, we assume, has nothing to do with Doug's dream. All right, now, Doug, place yourself in the location where you were while dreaming and describe it to us from there as if it's happening right now.
Yes, thank you, Robert. I'm in a car. I'm driving the car. And the street is in a neighborhood. It's kind of like being at the top of the hill in San Francisco, the crookedest street in the world. And I'm going downhill, but the car is going too fast. And I'm unable to slow it down and drive down that street safely. And interesting thing about this, Robert, this dream is that it was a recurring dream with the same feeling of a lack of control. And by the third time I had it, I asked myself not to dream this anymore, and I haven't since then.
Okay, so let me first give you my responses, and I would not necessarily do that in therapy, but since we are in a didactic situation, the moment that you talk about the street, which is of course a street we all know, I could feel those movements happening in my spine. Then I noticed that I was out of breath, and then I was leaning forward with the feeling. So that's what was happening to me as I was listening to the dream. So I take that as information. I take that as information because that was not happening before you were telling the dream. These were specifically happening as I was listening to the dream. So everybody in the group, for a moment, feel what happened to you as you heard. Don't tell it, but just feel for a moment what happened to you as Doug told this dream. Okay, now Doug, can you tell it again from, I always listen to dreams twice because that's what you do to poems. You always read a poem twice. So tell it again entirely from inside. Try to get as much into that car as you can, into that fear, into all this stuff that you don't want to feel.
Okay, it's a helpless feeling that pressing on the brake did not do what I feared. I mean,
stay in the present tense.
Me,
stay in the present tense.
Okay, it's not taking me out of the feeling of a lack of control and making me feel I'm really afraid that I'm going to run over off the street into somebody's yard and injure them or myself.
Okay, so the way that we can work on it, we have to see that we have a limited amount of time. The way that we can work on it is from three perspectives: from the perspective of Doug, from the perspective of the car, and from the perspective of the street. The perspective of the street is most difficult, so we probably won't have time for that. But because everything in the dream is being dreamed. And so if we want to get into the dream as a whole play, then you have to get into the perspective of all the different characters. And one of the characters is the street, another of the characters is the car. So can you go to the moment where the dream opens? And are you already in the place? Oh, get this feedback. I don't know what it is. It probably comes
sorry,
from.
it's just it's only Robert and Doug that are unmuted, so I don't know where it's coming from.
Okay. Doug, is it possible for you, or Audrey, is it possible for you to turn your sound down a little bit?
Yes, we'll do that.
Yeah, because then I don't get the feedback. So that you can still hear me though.
Yes.
Okay, good. So in the opening moment, are you already on that street, or are you at the top of it? Where are you in the opening moment?
I'm in the car, been driving and I am at the top of the street.
Okay,
Well,
go
I'm-
there. Slow it down, slow it down. Time
Yeah,
out. So
okay.
what we're going to be doing is the way that this works is you do it by slowing it down. The imagination is incredibly fast, and if you want to have the imagination sink into the body, can only happen by slowing down. So can you, which is difficult for me right now because I had a really great cup of coffee. Can you go to that moment? You're sitting in the car and try to really go into slow motion and feel the steering wheel in your hands. So sense the steering wheel in your hands and describe to me, how are you holding the steering wheel? Be aware of the environment, aware of the street. How are you holding the steering wheel in your hands?
I'm holding it very tightly or tensely, thinking maybe I can slow it down.
Yeah. So
That way.
at that moment, feel your hands and let all your attention go to your hands and the tension in your hands. Sense what that is like. And the hope that you can slow it down that way. So at that moment, you already know that the brakes don't work.
No, I didn't, I don't know that yet.
Okay, so feel the steering wheel in your hands. Really feel your hands, sense the tension, and now in slow motion, begin to feel the first moment where you're trying to engage the brakes. Can you describe that moment?
Yes, I'm gripping the wheel very tightly and praying that the brakes are going to work. And
Right.
they're not
And
working.
you must be doing something with your right leg, right?
Yes, I'm pressing on the brakes with my right foot.
With your right foot. So focus your attention in your foot and feel the moment where your foot goes down and the brake does not respond. What happens from your foot into your body?
My foot is like it's asleep and it's not working.
Your foot is not working.
Yes,
That's interesting. Stay with that. Stay with that.
just
So feel how
realized
yeah,
that
yeah.
I've been blaming it on the brakes. I think it's my foot
Yeah, feel that.
is asleep and unable to press down.
Yeah. So let all your attention go into your foot that is asleep and unable to press down. Time out. Do you notice that only by slowing it down can you begin to get into what's actually happening? The foot, not the brakes. So can you sense the foot asleep? What is it like to be in this asleep foot? What is this sleep like?
It's like being out of my body, out of control.
Feel that sense of being out of your body. Feel how you're not connected to your body. Feel that disconnect. Sense what it is like to be so disconnected from your body, so asleep.
I'm looking down at my body and saying, what's wrong here? What's going on?
Yeah. So get that sense, the time out. So this is the whole body is already preparing for trauma. That's what's happening with trauma, right? You go out of your body. So sense this, how you're above your body, how somehow you can't engage your body. Feel what it's like that you're not able to engage your body.
It's like I am hearing this buzzing that I heard when I was 9 years old, having my tonsils taken out. And they were
Anesthesia.
dropping the anesthetic on the mask.
Yeah. So feel that anesthesia. Feel that you're in a state of anesthesia.
I don't want to leave the physical. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Before I go to sleep.
Feel the fear of the little boy.
I want to scream and shout to
Yeah,
stop.
feel that sense, feel that
Yes.
sense. And stay involved. The foot is asleep. You're already above your body. You're seeing this happening. You're about to be traumatized. You can feel it. You're scared out of your mind, literally. And now what I want to do is, as you feel this throughout your body, I want you to go back to the steering wheel. And now feel how the steering wheel, and we're moving now away from Doug. We're moving to the steering wheel. Begin to sense the steering wheel and how the steering wheel connects to the car. Feel how the steering wheel connects to the car.
Okay, the steering wheel, I can manipulate the car's direction with the steering wheel.
Yeah, don't role play. No role playing. Just feel through the steering wheel, the shaft, feel how it moves to the axle, feel the connection, begin to sense it, physically sense it, not role playing it, physically sense it. Sense how when you turn it, the wheels begin to turn. Feel that with the body of the wheel. Can you sense that?
Yes, yes.
So sense that, and sense that throughout the car. Sense that the car is steering. And now begin to feel the way that the car is moving in this very turning topsy-turvy road. Begin to feel it in the car. The car seems to maneuver it.
The car is doing the maneuvering.
Yes.
I'm not
Sense that.
able.
It's a self-driving car. So feel how the car is doing it, how the car is in control. Sense the way the car moves around the curves. Feel the way that the car is moving down the road. Sense that in the presence of the car.
Okay.
And yeah, and where in the presence of the car is this most palpable, this movement, that control that the car has?
It's I'm floating. I'm unable to connect with the car.
Yeah, that's you. But we're now going to the car, because
Oh,
the
the car.
car is able to move. The car is not going out of control. The car is doing its own thing. I want you to follow how the car as a presence is doing its own thing. Doug is no longer connected, but feel how the car is doing it.
The car is doing fine.
Feel how the car is doing fine and how that works. How does the car have a sensory system? Does it sense things?
The car has the knowledge of how to control itself.
Feel this sense in the car, this knowledge of how to control itself. Feel that in the body of the car. It's an autonomic system. So feel this autonomic system that the car has that can control itself. Feel what that is like in the car.
It feels I can trust it. The car is trustable.
Right. Feel the trustworthy nature of the car and how it can move. How it doesn't seem to be perturbed, does it?
It doesn't. No, it's doing just fine. Yeah.
Yeah, feel that sense. Now, as you sense that it's doing just fine, that this autonomic system of the car is doing just fine, can you feel in Doug's foot being asleep, leaving his body, being out of control? Feel that in Doug's foot, in the movement up, losing the body, feeling out of control, and at the same time sensing the autonomic system of the car doing its thing, moving along the curves.
I don't understand how, but it is doing just fine without my foot or anything about me.
Yeah, right. So this is something very important to practice. We could go much further, but we have to stop. So what you practice is this trust in the autonomic system, because you feel so out of control. I don't know why that is. I mean, I can have guesses. I mean, I'm 74 years old, so I have a sense, I have guesses. But the sense of being out of control is not affecting the autonomic system. And so if you can feel the trust in the autonomic system, then going out of control is not as terrifying. Because otherwise you won't trust your body anymore. You won't trust, you think that your body is going out of control. Your body is not going out of control. It's your mind that's going out of control. And if your mind can go out of control while your body is in its autonomic way of being and moving along the curves, then it becomes a very different story. But that takes practice, so you need to practice that.
Yes, okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. I feel like I can trust more now.
Good. Well, that's a very important thing for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So as you can see, this is a short form, right? You can work on this dream for at least 2 hours, especially when you still go into the curves of the street. And if you feel deeper into the autonomic system and then feel it as in the whole autonomic nervous system of the body, but we don't have time for that. So this is a short form piece.
Thank you for that demonstration. And we have Marilyn on Spotlight next. If you want to unmute yourself, please.
You know, as much as I would love to have Robert work with my dream, it's not a recurring one, and it has a lot of
Oh,
elements.
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. We'll
If there's
most of it will-
somebody who feels that they would rather have that.
No. We always apologize for our dreams. And that's the nature. And most of your dream will stay on the editing floor. So just tell
Oh,
me
I'm not
that.
worried about that.
No, but that's what happens, because the alchemists say that you can only, if you put too much in the vessel, it won't cook. Right? Like a turkey for Thanksgiving. If the turkey's too big and you have too little time, you get an uncooked turkey. So we'll have to edit it down to a manageable.
Yeah, you
amount.
can pick out the important
Yeah,
elements.
yes. So for a moment, everybody feel again into your body. After we've worked with Doug's dream, we've been affected by that. Feel the baseline now before we hear Marilyn's dream. And now, Marilyn, tell the dream in the present tense as if it were happening right now.
Okay. I'm not staying in a hotel. Instead, I'm staying at a friend's house. And this is a friend with whom I've had a bit of estrangement over the last couple years.
Wait, you're reading the dream. You're reading the dream. I don't want you to read the dream.
Okay.
I would like you to be in the environment and tell it from within as if it is happening right now. If you
Okay.
read the dream, you're in a wrong part of your brain.
Okay. So instead of the hotel, I'm staying at a estranged friend's house, and I see a neighbor who talks to me about books. I'm a little wary of the situation, and then I go out and I'm shopping, and I see this same estranged friend in a shop buying spyware. She wants to spy on this neighbor who was offering me a book. I'm also carrying a dog that I had about 35 years ago, a scruffy little dog that I love very much. And we are wandering around. It's overcast. The sky is reddish. It's raining and very muddy underfoot. And then Twerp, my dog, and I, wandering around, encounter a lot of other dogs coming from strange buildings. And Twerp jumps down and runs up into a decrepit old building. And I'm standing there waiting for Twerp to come back to me. And other dogs come out. But finally, Twerp emerges and I wake up.
Okay. This is a recent dream?
About last week, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Can you say something that you feel would not be too revealing about this estranged friend and your estrangement?
Absolutely. This estranged friend has, in my mind, a very strong sense of what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been on the wrong side several times with her.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I never felt that I was, and decided to sever the relationship
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to have that kind of control over me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And your dog, can you say something about Scruffy is his name?
So it was Twerp,
Twerp, but he's a scruffy dog.
a very scruffy little
Yeah.
terrier dog that was always my dog. And even it was from a litter of a prior dog, which we gave away. And then that person died and I got Twerp back. And even though I had 3 sons and a husband, Twerp was always by my side. And so I felt really close to Twerp and very sad when Twerp finally died in old
Mm-hmm.
age.
Mm-hmm. And one more question, and feel totally free to give me any answer you want. Because when there's a decrepit old building, I am always very interested in people's physical health. So what is your physical health like, if I may ask?
I'm 85 and I feel like I'm 65. I'm in
Oh,
very
good.
good health. I have no body parts that are doing
Good.
anything except aging.
Great. Yeah, great. Very good. All right, so let's begin. The scene that I want to work on, the 2 scenes I want to work on. The one scene is where you meet your estranged friend who is buying spying equipment.
Yes.
And the other is, then I want to get into the perspective of Twerp, right?
Twerp.
Yeah, Twerp, into the perspective of Twerp, and go into the decrepit old building and get the sense of what it's like for Twerp to be in the decrepit old building. So those 2 scenes I want to work. But we'll start with your perspective. So we're going to be working this in 3 perspectives. We're going to start with Marilyn's perspective. You always begin with the identified perspective. So usually the identified perspective is with the waking body. So we start with Marilyn, then we go to the estranged friend, and then we go to the perspective of Twerp. So where are you when you meet again your estranged friend? Where are you?
I seem to be in her house locally. And my sense when I'm there is that I could have stayed at a hotel, but why am I at her house instead?
Hold on. That's a scene that preceded it. We're going to the scene where you meet her again.
In the shop.
Yeah, okay, go there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the shop. And
What kind
I
of shop?
don't, I think it's a department store,
Yeah.
and it's large.
Many
And she
people?
doesn't see me, but I
Are there,
notice what she's buying.
are there many people around? Is it busy?
It's very well lit. It's
Uh-huh.
bright. There are shoppers, but
Hmm.
none between me and her, although I
Hmm.
sense that I'm behind something. So
Right.
she's not aware of me.
Right. So, are there sounds? Can you hear anything or smell anything? Any other senses activated?
Strangely, I keep feeling like we're in the perfume counter section.
Ah, good, good, good. Stay with that.
Why the spyware is there, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter.
I don't hear any sound, but I do see.
But stay with the perfume, stay with the smell. Time out. Smell and taste are just about your oldest senses. So if something like that comes up, you always pay more attention. Can you sense the perfume environment?
Yes, definitely. I can sense the perfume environment. I have a very strong sense of smell.
Yeah.
My mother wore perfume every day of her life. I never
Right.
do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Right.
It's not something that we use anymore.
But your mother is very perfumed.
My mother is very perfumed. Yes.
Yeah. So sense that memory of your mother's perfume being in the perfume section. Feel associatively the presence of your mother. Smell the perfume. And now begin to describe your estranged friend who does not see you.
My friend also has a dog.
Mm-hmm. With her?
Not with her, but
Mm-hmm.
part of the estrangement was because of the behavior of her with her dog, where she inherited it, and it was all of a sudden like it was a child. She never had children of her own, and the dog
Right.
became her child.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sense that and become aware of what she's doing right now. You say something about spying equipment. Can you say more about that?
She's buying equipment to spy. My sense is that she is buying it to spy on the neighbor who I briefly met, who offered me a book. I don't know who he is, but I'm feeling it's not fair
Mm-hmm.
for her.
Right. So feel that sense of it's not fair. Feel your sense of that this is a person that you can't trust. And feel what that is like in your body to be aware of the untrustworthy nature of your spying friend. What does it do to you?
Well, I think I fear that she's going to find other faults in me.
Uh-huh.
that she'll bring to my attention.
So as you feel that, begin to sense it with your body. What happens to your body as you get into that fear of being found fault with again?
Yeah, I think I tensed up a bit.
Feel the tensing up.
Yeah, definitely tensed up a bit.
Yeah. And where can you feel that most?
My shoulders.
Yeah. Sense that in the shoulders, the tensing up. You can't trust this person. She'll find fault with you again. Feel that tensing up. And now we go and move away from Marilyn's perspective to the friend, what should we call her? Estranged friend, or such a estrangia? What should we call her?
Estranged
Or
friend.
estranged friend, okay. So we go to estranged friend and begin to describe her way of moving, her way of standing, and her involvement with what she's about to buy. Just notice. Time out. So you always start with noticing, and then you get into an empathic noticing, and then through the empathic noticing, you get into an identification. So notice her presence.
I see her. I see her in a very typical pose, rather upright, a little looking down her nose,
Mhm.
judging, a
Yeah.
very judgmental pose.
Yeah.
Tall. Feeling that
Yeah. What I want you to do as you describe this, begin to use your own body to mimic the pose in very slight movements. If you try to mimic it too much, then it becomes overdone. But I call it micro movements. In micro movements, mimic her stance. Feel it with your body. Time out. Now we're using our capacity for mimesis. Mimesis is the capacity to become like other. So sense this sensation in your body. Feel what it's like to stand like that. Is she leaning forward?
no, she's very upright.
Feel the uprightness. Is that mainly in the spine?
Yes,
Or-
definitely
yeah.
in the spine.
Yeah. So
Elongated neck.
feel that spine, elongated neck. Begin to sense into the spine and the elongated neck. And begin to feel her involvement with what she's doing.
She feels that she knows
Mhm.
what's going on and that
Yeah.
it's her job to
Yeah.
tell the world.
Right.
That's her duty, her
Feel
moral
that?
ethic.
Very, very good. Keep feeling that without any judgment. You're now in her perspective. So she feels her duty to do this.
Yes. Her duty.
Feel that sense of duty. Feel what it's like to have that duty. Why does she have that duty?
It's a heavy
Yeah.
duty to know
Uh-huh.
what everyone else should be doing
Right.
and how everyone else should be acting and talking.
Yeah, feel
and
that.
thinking.
Feel the weight of that, of knowing everything, the weight of knowing what the world should be like, what people should be like. Feel the weight of that. How is that in her body, that weight? that weight of knowing.
See her shoulder sagging a little bit.
Yeah. Feel into her sagging shoulders.
I definitely see her shoulders sagging a bit.
Yes. Sense that. Let all your attention be in her sagging shoulders. What is happening in her sagging shoulders as she's feeling the weight of knowing it, of being in the know. Nobody else is. She is. Feel the weight of that in the sagging shoulders.
Yeah.
It feels as if it makes her life a drag. I feel drag in her shoulders. Is that true?
See, I feel a lot of tiredness.
Tiredness.
Yeah.
Sense the tiredness in her shoulders.
Definitely a weight that she carries.
Yeah, feel that?
I feel that.
Yeah, stay with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's go to the moment where Twerp is just about to move into the decrepit building. Can you describe the decrepit building?
It seems to be an industrial area. There aren't any homes. There are like warehouses, although this looks like an old 2-story ramshackle board and batten house
Mm-hmm.
in a
Is
muddy.
it still in use or not?
I don't get the feeling that anyone could live in this area.
Yeah.
Not well, not happily.
Uh-huh. So feel the ramshackle nature of this building.
Yeah, I feel like there are boards hanging and the steps are not even.
Right. Sense that
I
atmosphere.
don't want to
yeah.
go into it. I don't want
Right.
to go into it.
So let's follow Twerp because he doesn't mind. So can you focus on Twerp? Which Twerp is this? Is this the young Twerp or the old Twerp?
This is definitely the young twerp,
Okay.
very lively, jumping out of my arms.
Yeah. So feel Twerp jumps out of your arms as you are approaching the ramshackle building.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
feel that and feel the energy with which Twerp jumps out of your arms.
It's startling.
Mhm.
I don't try to hold on to twerp,
Right.
but she
So
leaps.
hold on. What we're going to be doing is we're going to move away from Marilyn into the presence of Twerp. So go into the leap of Twerp and feel how she is using her body to leap. Feel the energy it takes to leap.
It
There's
takes a lot of
thrust
energy.
in it. Yeah, feel the energy.
It takes a lot of energy to leap out of my arms into
Yeah.
the mud.
Yeah. And what is it like for her to land in the mud? Stay with her. She's just leapt.
She's focused on the building, not the mud.
Ah,
Wanting
feel
to
her
get
focus on the building. Yeah, feel that. Feel that. Feel that with her body. She wants to get to that building.
Yeah.
How does that affect her body, her desire to get to the building?
she just is wagging her tail and jumping
Yeah.
up the
Mhm.
step and going very fast.
Yeah. Can you slow that down? Sense her wagging tail, her fast movement. I feel eagerness. Is that correct?
Very eager.
Yeah. Feel
Very
her eagerness. And it's an eagerness to explore, isn't it?
Yes. I don't get the sense of knowing what's inside, but just
Right.
curiosity,
Sense that?
maybe hope for a reward,
Huh.
a treat.
Ah. Try to not put in any of the Marilyn stuff on that. Just feel her bouncing up the stairs, wagging her tail, eagerly moving into the building. Feel her eagerness. What is it like to be eager like that, to explore?
It's a wonderful feeling. It's exciting,
Mhm.
very exciting.
Yeah.
Adventurous.
Feel that excitement. And then sense in the shoulders of the estranged friend the weight and the sagging of having to know everything. Very different from Twerp, who doesn't know.
Right.
This is the one who knows, and it's such a burden to know all that stuff. Feel that in the shoulders. And then sense the smell of the perfume that reminds you of mother. Sense the smell of the perfume that reminds you of mother as you breathe it in. The one who's in the know, the weight of knowing, sagging the shoulders, having to know, and the curiosity and the eagerness and the wagging tail of Twerp, Jung, bouncing into the ramshackle building just to see what's going on. Curious. That spirit of curiosity. The shoulders sagging in having to know everything. And the perfume of your mother. Can you feel all that?
I can't feel all that.
Stay with it. Just stay with it for 2 minutes. Just feel it. The perfume of your mother. Having to know everything and how heavy that is, how it sags the shoulders. And Twerp's spirit of exploration. Eager, youthful, exploring the ramshackle building. What is it like to feel that spirit of exploration, the weight of knowing, and the perfume of your mother at the same time?
It feels like my life.
Yeah, feel that, sense that. So keep practicing this, okay? Because this gives images to your life.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn, for sharing your dream with us. Thank you, Robert, for an exceptional experience, witnessing that, being part of that, feeling that. I want to know how you're feeling, Robert, if you want to continue or do you want to call it a wrap it up? How are you doing?
We still have one dreamer, right?
We do if you're wanting.
But the thing is how there may be questions now.
Okay,
And so if there are questions, then I'd rather answer questions and give you a sense of why I did what I did.
yeah, well, I'd love to hear that. Okay. So we're back on gallery view for those of you who want to switch back to gallery view if you aren't already. And if you'd like to ask Robert a question, you can raise your hand either physically or virtually, and I'll request that you unmute.
Not just questions, also comments, things that you
Comments
want
or
to say. Yeah.
questions. I'll share something I noticed. Oops, my video's off.
Your video's gone.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Mhm.
What I experienced in my body, I like that returning to this empathic reminder to become the experience of the other in the dream. It's really not the other is what I'm getting as you lead us through this. And there seems to be a similarity in both dreams where there's different aspects and perspectives of self represented, and we're maybe leaning or identifying or in one direction more than the other, and that at the end of that we're feeling everything as happening simultaneously. It feels like it brings it back together in a homeostasis of more. I felt more of a balance in myself just by being witness to both of these dreams.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to emphasize one thing. I am not of the opinion that everything in a dream is part of you. I have no idea because I don't know. I just know that these were encounters, and when you start to experience those encounters, things begin to emerge. It has the advantage to, so that, for instance, Marilyn does not have to feel, oh, I'm like this know-it-all friend of mine, and instead feel that that is a presence that is in her world and in her environment. The notion that everything is part of you is individualism, it's Western individualism, and it is a kind of a psychological belief system that I do not ascribe to.
Thank you for that clarification. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to the conversation about what you witnessed? Doug?
Doug?
You
Unmute, unmute. Yeah.
I felt like, Robert, I've never thought in the world about being the car. But when I became the car, I was just totally trusting and letting go and letting the autonomic nervous system to take over. And I thank my autonomic nervous system every morning.
Yeah.
I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, along with my trillions of atoms, etc. But God darn, what a freeing thing when I became the car and realized I don't need to hang on to that steering wheel or press on the brakes. I could just go with it, you know?
Right.
So thank you very much.
Oh, very good. Yes, what happens to, I've worked a lot with people who have gone through illness because I went through illness myself, almost died. And so I'm very interested in illness. And what happens, I'm not talking about you because I don't know you, but people who have gone through illness frequently lose their trust in their body. And then there is a sense that you can't trust it anymore. And then it takes a lot of work to get back into the trust in the body. And so I think trust in the body is a really, really important ability. Because otherwise you're responsible for your heart, you're responsible for your lungs. Oh my God, you can't do that.
Amen.
It's a good point.
Audrey, did you
Other
want to say
comment?
something? Audrey's leaning forward. I don't know if she
talking.
wants to say
I
something.
think she's trying to mute. I think Hillary would like to speak. You can unmute, hon.
Yes, thanks.
Yes.
Robert, thank you. That was
Okay.
fantastic. What I found really fascinating was focusing on describing the dream in the present tense, because I have a lot of dreams, and when I describe them to everyone, I've always said, "This is what happened." And it's always been in the past tense. And I'm like, wow, what a nice way to reframe the dream when you're in it. So I was visualizing my dream. And the dream totally changed when I was listening to
Yeah.
Doug and Marilyn going, oh my gosh, my dream's completely different now that I'm just imagining it in the now. So thank you for that. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, what happens, there are two things. You imagine it in the now and you slow it down, because that's when, that's
yes.
what happened with Doug, that he could feel that it was not the brakes, it was not the car that was malfunctioning, it was his foot that was asleep. You could only get that by slowing it down. So
Right.
slowing things down is the essence of the work, and that I got from Alchemy, of course. Alchemy tries to slow everything down. And actually the paradox is when you slow things down, everything speeds up.
Thank you. Great question, or great sharing there, Hillary. It's funny because I've been really looking at the Alexander and the Feldenkrais method, and it's all about slowing down.
Well, I studied Alexander technique, and about 3 years, 3 times a week, and it changed everything in my body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an epiphany yesterday when I heard something about how, how consciousness moves into form. It's slower vibration. It's almost like that's how consciousness learns about itself, by slowing things down, by entering physical reality. It's
Right. And so that's what embodied imagination is, right? Embodied imagination comes from the Neoplatonic theory that there are 3 levels of reality. There's spiritual reality or mental reality or mathematics. There is physical reality, or this kind of reality that at the moment matter, which we now think is the ultimate reality. And then there's a third reality, and that is the way that imagination constantly embodies us. So that when Marilyn is embodied by the know-it-all, she becomes a different body, elongated, heavy shoulders. So she becomes embodied by imagination. We constantly are embodied by imagination. You see this with a person who has a depression. In a depression, you're embodied by the depressing world, and after a while, the person begins to walk like that. And so we're constantly embodied by imagination. And that is a third realm. It's a real realm. It's a realm of reality where body and spirit, or body and mind, come together. And that dropped out of Western consciousness in about the 12th or 13th century. And then we only were left with body and mind. And that's how we got into the body-mind conundrum, which we've been trying to solve, which actually isn't a conundrum. It's just part of Aristotelian philosophy.
Mhm. Right. I had the opposite experience of what you mentioned earlier about where we don't trust our body after an illness. And my experience was having gone through a serious surgery, and I came out with some PTSD because I was operated on by a robot, and my body was, anesthetized. So it was that my body didn't trust my personality because I had put it in that situation, and I had to heal that rift.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because it was like I was living in a
that's
wounded my body was like a wounded animal, and I was living in this wounded animal. And so I had to regain her trust.
Right. Yeah. Many people, like for instance, I work with several people who have Parkinson's. People feel betrayed by their body, and they can't trust their body anymore because everything's beginning to shake, and you fall over and you get all these horrible things happening to you. So you don't trust your body anymore. if you can then get back into a trust of the body that you're in right now, that it still has an autonomic system, that has failure, that has limits, but it actually makes it possible to be in the body in a better way. And so
Excellent.
the sense of betrayal of the body by the, not of the body, betrayal by the body is a very strong sense I've seen a lot with people who've gone through illness, cancer. That was not supposed to happen to me.
Right.
Everybody else gets cancer.
Mm. And then would you like to say something about that, where in the gibberish class that I'm taking with you, you speak about reoccurring illnesses and how we treat them differently in the Western culture than back in the 17th century with the alchemists and other parts of the world, where you've studied medicine or been with people who do. You have a different perspective on that. Would you like to share it?
Well, of course, I'm saying so many things and I remember half of them. But what I assume that I meant is that when something appears structural, you can do two things. The first thing is what Doug did. I don't want to ever have this dream again. It's structural. And then you can do what we did in the dream work with Doug, was actually going into it and letting the dream self-manifest. And then you get to a structural element of your life that you don't want to get rid of. Now, we are very much programmed in the West, in the current West, to get rid of illness. Now, the advantage of being in a time where you couldn't get rid of illness as easily as we can, but more easy, believe you me, it's easier to get rid of many illnesses now than it was in the 17th century. So by going into it and seeing, you get a whole meaning field that begins to develop, a meaning field that begins to unfold, by which you are then in a world in which this begins to make sense. Not that you are frequently, like for instance, cancer. I had created the Santa Barbara Healing Sanctuary that's still going on in Mexico now. When people are usually in a sense of punishment. I have done something wrong. This cancer is because I didn't eat right, or this cancer is I didn't exercise enough, or this cancer is I was in a toxic relationship, all that kind of stuff. It is the way that sees it as a punishment for something. And I start out with, I have no bloody idea what this is about. It could be that that you live near a power station, or that you live near a nuclear power plant, whatever. I have no idea. So I don't know where the cancer comes from. And I don't know what the cancer means. And I follow very much Susan Sontag's notion of illness as metaphor, that illness as metaphor is one of the great problems that we have in many movements, where they think that they can find the metaphor in the illness. I'm not going from that at all. Read Susan Sontag, she debunks that notion totally, thank God. But you can go into it and begin to feel the world of this cancer. And as you feel the world of this cancer and the way that images get drawn in by it, it moves into a world in which it can exist. And that has an influence on the cancer. So that is very much like a 17th century way of doing it, putting it in a context, putting it in a frame that makes it possible to exist with it, and that makes it a meaningful experience. Because we have two ways. We have either, I'm going to lick this, I'm going to, John Wayne, right? And a few months later, he was dead. I'm not saying anything that he did wrong, but he was going to do this. And the other one is, I did something wrong. So if you can get rid of both of those, the martial way and the self-punishing way, if you can get rid of those and just be in the body that is the sick body, the ill body, and see what kind of images get pulled in by that, then illness begins to incubate dreaming. And that's what I'm doing. And that sets it in a different context, and that makes it easier to deal with, and sometimes even has physical effects.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. It's like really bringing back into our awareness how essential the imagination is, and how we, at least in this culture, have seen it as a myth, like that it isn't real, that it doesn't have substance.
Oh, yes, it is myth, but it's real. Myths
Yeah.
are real. And that's the difference. It's not the way that, and then I'm going to stop. The way that what happened with imagination is myth started out as reality. And then over 800 years, myth became the word for something that's not real.
Mhm.
So it is that in an arc of about 800 years, 700 years, it moved from reality to Walt Disney.
And now, do you see it moving back? Last question.
Well, let's just say that in the last 2000 years, the Neoplatonic movement has always been a minority movement.
Hmm.
All right,
Well,
my pleasure.
it was our pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you making time for us and letting us.
May I say one thing to Robert, Cindy,
Yes.
please?
Yes.
Robert, I think you answered it on page 109 when you said that the world of magic was going into the world of science. And I think now we're going from the world of science back into the world of magic as we learn about everything you're talking about.
Yes, and that has an incredible shadow side, because moving back into the world of magic also moves us into a world of conspiracy theory where everything is magical. So it has both sides to it, as most things do.
Mhm.
All right, everybody, have a
Thank
magical
you.
day.
Thanks,
You too.
Robert.
Thank you.
That was
Bye-bye.
wonderful.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Cindy. That was terrific.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you all for coming on and participating. And I think just the insights that were shared will continue to percolate. So we don't need to make any assumptions about what we learned or didn't yet, because we still have a whole lot of dreaming ahead of us.
Lifetime, huh?
Yeah. All right, friends. Well, if you'll be at the beach later, or Mulligan's, I think we'll be indoors. It feels pretty chilly, and I have the key for the clubhouse. So I'll see you there at 4 o'clock. And yeah, appreciate you showing up today. Thanks for your interest. Thanks for your support. It's always good to be with you.
Excellent.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.